Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of you asked for a solar grenade testing video in the comment section of my arc grenade testing video. And while I did have every intention of getting this out last season, I'm here to deliver. And yes, this is a long video. I have a lot to talk about because some of these grenades are extremely nuanced. But this video is timestamped for your viewing pleasure. Take it in small bites, jump to the grenades that you're interested in, or just let her run start to finish. Which is one of the best ways of communicating to the YouTube algorithm that you do support the content. But getting into it, we do have a few testing parameters, so we know what we're looking at. This video is going to be for PvE only. It's going to be heavy in the information department. If you're looking for fluff, you clicked on the wrong video. The testing is going to be done in terms of single target damage. Some grenades are more geared toward ad clearing, but Carl the Colossus is going to be our measuring stick. He may not be the ideal target for grenade damage testing, but I do want to keep the numbers consistent with all of my other videos. All of these grenades, aside from the healing grenade, do scorch targets. The damage from the full scorch cycle will be calculated in for the maximum damage of each grenade. I'll be testing all the grenades both with and without the Ember of Ashes fragment applied, and both with and without the Touch of Flame aspect for the Warlocks. Almost all of these damage numbers are going to be in terms of best case scenario. Some of these grenades were extremely difficult to damage source, but I did my best to decipher and communicate what is happening with each one. A few of these grenades deal damage over time or have multiple particles. The damage that you're actually getting in an in-game scenario can and will vary. But we have 8 selectable grenades with our solar subclass, 4 of which can be altered by the Touch of Flame aspect and 4 cannot. Those are the ones we're going to start with. The Tripmine Grenade, base cooldown a relatively short 1 minute and 31 seconds. This will stick to hard surfaces and detonate when enemies pass in front of it. And this grenade will lay idle for up to 10 seconds. Generally, sticking it to a wall or a ceiling is going to be the best play, but we will see 554 points of damage on a direct impact. This is followed quickly by a blast at 38,794. And this is not proximity-based damage, by the way. If the blast catches an enemy at all, they are guaranteed to take the full damage. This grenade applies 40 stacks of Scorch from the blast, and we'll see 11 Scorch ticks rolling down from 625, totaling out to 5,195 points of damage. Adding everything up, we're looking at 44,543 points of damage dealt from a single grenade at base. When we apply Ember of Ashes, nothing changes with the grenade damage itself, but it does result in 50% more Scorch stacks, and more Scorch ticks will be seen. So in this case, Scorch stacks applied now move up to 60, and Scorch ticks start at 873, with 14 in the full cycle. Total Scorch damage dealt in this case, 8,659. Altogether, that's 48,007 points of total damage, an extra 3,500 with the fragment applied. Moving on to the Swarm Grenade, which does have some quirks and inconsistencies due to the fact that it is a multi-particle grenade. Base cooldown, 1 minute and 31 seconds. On impact, this grenade splits into multiple drones that seek out nearby targets. The spawn count on these drones is 9, and they will lay in wait for 7 to 7.5 seconds. Each drone carries 5 Scorch stacks with it for a total of 45. The actual Scorch damage and Scorch ticks seen can vary slightly because the exact timing of when these drones contact a target will differ between grenades. Each drone is going to carry 2 damage values with it, one at 2,554, one at 2,386. I'm assuming it's just split blast damage. So 4,931 per drone provided they make clean and direct contact. So you can get 44,379 points of damage just out of the grenade itself. For the Scorch, as I said earlier, it's variable, but in my best test I did see 15 total ticks. 4 occurred during the detonation of the drones, and 11 rolled after the fact, starting at 625. Total Scorch damage in this case was 7,031, moving the max potential damage from one grenade into the ballpark of 51,728. Best case scenario. With Ember of Ashes applied, my best test results yielded 22 Scorch ticks. 4 during, 18 in the afterburn starting at 1104, totaling out to 16,524. Grand total with the fragment, 68,252. So, provided everything lands as it should, that's actually a pretty nice boost from Ember of Ashes in this case. But there is always the potential for missed damage if one of these drones detonates early, or goes to track down a different target. With that out of the way, how about a simpler one? The Incendiary Grenade. Base cooldown, a longer 2 minutes and 1 second. This one is without a doubt the most grenade-like grenade of the bunch. It simply explodes after a short delay after contacting the ground or impacting an enemy. It deals proximity-based blast damage and carries 60 Scorch stacks. If the grenade directly contacts Carl, we'll see 338 points of damage from the impact. And if that grenade happens to settle right at Carl's feet, we'll see a maximum of 57,348 points of blast damage. This does diminish out from the point of the explosion. We're going to see 14 Scorch Ticks from the grenade that rolled down from 873, and total out to 8,660. So, 66,346 points of potential damage here. With Ember of Ashes applied, you're going to get 20 total Scorch Ticks, rolling down from 1,219. Here, total Scorch damage is 15,639, with 90 stacks applied. So, max damage with Ember of Ashes equipped, 73,325. Next up, the Thermite Grenade, another one that was a little more tricky to dissect and can vary a good bit in its damage output. Base cooldown 1 minute and 45 seconds. This grenade sends forth a burning line of fire that damages and scorches enemies in its path. The line of flame is directional and is determined by the angle at which the grenade contacts the ground. So there is the potential for the grenade to stray from its desired course if it bounces off an obstruction. But this will fire off 4 flame waves in total. One on impact, which is followed by 3 pulses that occur roughly 1.5 seconds apart. The flame wave does carry split damage values, both of which maxed out at 10,946. And it does seem like you hit those numbers a little more consistently when the target is a bit further away from the point of origin of the flame wave. The wave does need to hit the target fairly directly to see max damage. Out on the edges, the damage does diminish, and in some cases, you'll only see a single damage value register. For the Scorch, it's going to continue to build with each wave that makes contact. In the instances where all 4 waves did hit Carl, I was able to see 24 Scorch Ticks, totaling out to 13,105 points of damage. And for the Scorch stacks, Bungie has it listed as 10 per wave. I'm gonna have to call BS on that. I think it's 20. And I'll show you why I'm thinking this when we throw on Ember of Ashes. But if the damage is maximized, so 4 double hits from the flame wave, both at max damage, there's about 100,000 points of potential damage here. But that also is accompanied by the chance of missing out on some of this damage. With Ember of Ashes applied, a single grenade can spark an ignition. In every instance where all 4 flame waves connected, regardless of the damage values shown, the ignition procced, even if I missed one of the split damage values. So if each wave's actually carrying 30 with Ember of Ashes applied, 4 times 30 is 120. There's your ignition. If the base were 10, that'd be 15 per wave with the fragment. 15 times 4, 60. We wouldn't even be close to an ignition if that held true. But with the fragment applied, I was only seeing 7 Scorched Ticks, totaling out to 6,313 points of damage. But then the ignition occurs, snuffing out the Scorch, dealing 36,166. Max damage with Ember of Ashes, 130,047. And even though the grenade does have its inconsistencies, that is the highest potential damage up to this point. And that's half the grenades out of the way, so we're getting into the ones that are affected by the Touch of Flame aspect as well. Moving on to the Firebolt Grenade, and this is one that is better suited for ad clearing than single target damage, releasing multiple bolts of solar light that strike nearby enemies. Base cooldown, a quick 1 minute and 4 seconds. Up to 3 bolts in total will fork out from the point of impact, as long as there are 3 enemies for the bolts to target. If there's only 1 enemy in the vicinity, you're only getting 1 bolt. But if the grenade does directly contact a target, we're looking at 277 points of impact damage, and 17,993 points of damage from that single bolt. This carries 20 Scorch stacks and 7 Scorch Ticks, totaling out to 2,446 points of damage. Total damage for 1 grenade versus Carl, 20,736. With Ember of Ashes, we'll get 2 more Scorch Ticks, 9 in total, carrying 3,728 points of damage, with 30 stacks applied. Damage with the fragment, 21,998. With the Touch of Flame aspect, the only change is the number of enemies that can be struck by the bolts. At base it would target 3 enemies, with the aspect it'll target 4, but no change to the single target damage whatsoever. So, onward. Every Starfire Protocol user's preferred selection, the Fusion Grenade. It's an explosive grenade that attaches to targets. Base cooldown, 1 minute and 13 seconds. We're going to see 306 points of damage from the impact, 39,469 points of damage from the blast, and 11 Scorched Ticks dealing 5,203 points of damage. That's a total of 44,978 while applying 40 Scorch stacks. With Ember of Ashes equipped, we're going to see 15 Scorch Ticks rolling down from 873, now dealing 9,171 points of damage. New total, 48,946, with 60 Scorch stacks applied. Looking at the Fusion Grenade with just the Touch of Flame aspect, this is going to cause the grenade to explode twice. The initial explosion's damage remains unchanged, but we do tack on an additional 45,541 points of damage from the secondary blast, over doubling the damage output from the base grenade. New total, 90,519. But even though the grenade does explode twice, the Scorch stacks and Scorch damage are unchanged. Still 40 stacks with 11 ticks. The double explosion isn't tacking on anything extra in terms of Scorch. With both Ember of Ashes and the Touch of Flame aspect, everything totaled up works out to 94,487, which is very good damage considering the grenade is on a quick cooldown, and that damage is basically guaranteed as long as the grenade hits the target. On to our last offensive grenade, the Solar Grenade. Another grenade with several moving parts, so widely variable damage. Base cooldown 2 minutes and 1 second. It creates a ball of solar light at the point of impact, dealing damage over time and applying Scorch. So this is an area of effect and damage over time grenade, so the target does need to remain in the damage field for the full duration to maximize the damage potential. At base, we can see 139 points of impact damage and 2,771 points of damage from the initial blast. A few moments after that initial blast, the damage over time kicks in at 3,446 points of damage per tick. I was able to see up to 13 damage ticks over the grenade's total 4.5 second duration. But the Scorch is also building at the same time. For the stacks, it applies 20 on the initial blast and 14 for every second that the target remains in the area of effect, which in and of itself lasts for roughly 3.5 seconds. That adds up to 62 stacks, best case scenario, because it does seem to need a full second to apply more Scorch stacks. For the actual damage from the Scorch, it does seem to have some inconsistencies, but I was able to register up to 19 ticks, dealing 6,188 points of damage. Adding all that up, we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 54,000 points of damage. Bringing Ember of Ashes into play, I was able to get up to 25 damage ticks from the Scorch. They totaled out to 10,758 points of damage, which would bring our baseline damage up to 58,726. Doing the math for the stacks, this should be applying a maximum of 93. Looking at the Solar Grenade with just the Touch of Flame aspect, the duration is going to be increased from 4.5 seconds to 6.5 seconds, and lava blobs will be expelled from the damage field, 10 in total per grenade. These deal 6,928 points of damage apiece, and this does not appear to be proximity-based damage. I mean, they can miss a target, but if a target is affected by one, they will take that full damage value. Also occurring now are damage hits at 970, which in some way have to be tied back to the lava blobs. Now, I'm not 100% sure if this is maybe discharge damage or pass-through damage, but it is damage and will be calculated. But with one grenade, when Carl hung right in the area of effect, we have our initial blast and now 20 damage ticks from the damage over time. For the Scorch, I was able to see 26 total ticks. 11 occurred while the grenade was burning, and 15 from the afterburn, totaling out to 9,909. For the lava blobs, due to the random nature in which they discharge, I'm going to put us on the safe side and only credit it for 6 of each damage value. You can see more, you can see less, but 6 was a pretty consistent number in my testing. But when we total all that out, we're looking at a potential of 128,788 points of damage. And this should be applying 90 Scorch stacks as well, 20 from the initial blast, 5.5 seconds in the damage field, which should yield 70, so 90, not quite enough to spark the ignition. Piling on Ember of Ashes now. As long as the target remains in the damage field for 4 seconds, we will get an ignition. 21 stacks will be applied every second. 21 times 4 is 84. Add on 30 from the initial blast now, that's 114 stacks, carrying us past the ignition threshold. For the damage in my best case scenario, I got 10 Scorch ticks, which added up to 3,387 points of damage. With no afterburn Scorch because of the ignition, but we do get to tack on that 36,166. New total, 158,632. But you can see reflected in Carl's health bar, in this case, he did take a bit more damage than that. Probably more like 180,000 points of damage. Simply due to the fact this was one of the cases where I had 9 lava blobs hit the mark. So the potential is always there for you to deal a little bit more or a little bit less damage, depending on the size and the movement of the target that you're using the grenade on. Last grenade, and the only support grenade that we have, the Healing Grenade. Base cooldown 1 minute and 22 seconds. On impact, this grenade creates a burst of healing, and leaves behind an orb that when collected, grants restoration for 5 seconds. This orb has a lingering duration of about 8 seconds once the grenade makes contact with the surface. At base, this orb is going to provide 1x restoration. And just for a simple way to demonstrate the effect, I'm going to let Carl gun me down. At base, he's able to drop me with his minigun in 3.31 seconds. When trying to cast a grenade, as soon as my health goes critical, the healing burst pops me back up into my shield bar, but it's slowly dropping back down during the restoration period. So it's not providing quite enough restoration to outrun the damage. And I do go down in 7.66 seconds once the restoration wears off, but it did keep me alive for twice as long. With the Touch of Flame aspect applied, it is going to create a more powerful healing burst on impact, and we're going to get 2x restoration when the orb is collected, for much more aggressive healing during the uptime. And while Carl still guns me down in 9.34 seconds, only a marginal improvement in that respect, the 2x restoration keeps right up with the damage being taken. I mean, Carl's minigun is barely moving my health bar at all during the restoration period, which is exponentially more useful in-game than it may appear on paper. This can really go a long way in upping the likelihood of surviving a bad situation. But that's it, we made it through them all. Just barely, but we made it. And if you actually made it through the entire video up to this point, a true and sincere thank you. And if you'd like to support the content further, like, subscribe, share it with some friends. All go a long way in helping out the video and the channel. Follow Ironworker814 on Twitter if you'd like to keep tabs on me over there. And comment down below if you have something to add. And with all that being said, you guys are awesome, and I will catch you on the next one.